Hey, beautiful people. I want to share with you what is happening with our world. Because I've spent the last few years trying to work it out. Because no one's going to tell you. It's always a lot more than what we see in the media, and what we see in the movies. You can get little bits of an idea, but this is a historical event that we find ourselves in. It's a biblical event that we find ourselves in. We are going into World War III. It's being pushed right now. The West is alongside Ukraine and it's alongside Israel. And have you ever wondered why that is? I certainly have. It's like, why are our leaders not questioning the direction that we're being taken, that the West is being taken? Because I don't hear our leaders in all the Western nations speaking peace, speaking negotiation, speaking let's talk to Iran, let's talk to Russia, let's talk to the Palestinians, let's sit down and formulate a strategy so we don't have to go to war. But why are our leaders just continuing without even any other consideration other than we must win, we must defeat Russia, we must defeat the evil axes of the Palestinians, we must attack the... there's a lot going on and we aren't being told about it. So I've spent a long time researching what is going on, and I want to start sharing my understanding. So if you know what's going on, that will then awaken you to how do we fix it? How do we stop this? And so where to start? That is, it's a long story. It is a biblical story. It's a story that starts with the Israelites and the 12 tribes, believe it or not. It starts with the Abraham giving birth to Isaac and two sons who happened to be twins. It was Jacob and Esau. Now, because they were twins, there was instantly a dispute as to who gets to be the king, who has rights. And there's stories in the Old Testament about how Esau sold his birthright of kingship over a bowl of porridge. He was the firstborn, Esau. He was born as a ruddy, red-headed kid. And he was a hunter. He was not a farmer. He was always out killing animals, bringing them home for food. Like, he was a hunter. Jacob, on the other hand, stayed at home. He was with the family. He was building the community. Jacob was also more of a kind-hearted person, where Esau was more a fighter. He was a hunter. And so you have two different personalities that want to become the king, to be the leader. And of what I can understand with what's happening in this world, it comes from these two bloodlines of kings have been fighting it out for the last it was 2000 BC when they were born. So the last 3,000 years we have been fighting because of these kings, because Esau went off and created a kingdom and had his family and had the Edomites, or the Edomians, where Jacob had 12 children and they were the Israelites. So the Israelites were a nation, a society based around God and the tenets of God. They were God-loving people. They built societies around those tenets, the 10 Commandments, the 7 Noahide laws. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt love your brother, your neighbor, as you love yourself. These tenets are what we in the West have inherited, and we in the West are holding on to these tenets of this Israelite societies. Now, it's been a long step, 3,000 years of a lot has gone down over the last 3,000 years to get to this point. There's been a lot of fighting because Esau and the Edomites have been fighting with the Israelites for the last 3,000 years. But who are the Edomites? Who are the Israelites? Because no one even knows. It's like we haven't even been told who the Israelites are. Who are the 12 tribes? Because it's a very important point to understand. Now, how do you prove who the Israelites are? Well, I have deducted exactly who the Israelites are. And the Israelites are the Caucasian people. They came from the promised land, which is the Jerusalem, the land that they were promised by God. They had to leave because a whole heap of shit went down between the Israelites and the Edomites and the tribe of Judah. The 12 tribes, the tribe of Benjamin was massacred. This was the king's tribe. Benjamin was the chosen king out of the 12 boys. And those 12, and so Benjamin created a community which grew into a tribe, and all the other 12 tribes also created. And at the time of Exodus, they say that the tribes, like they had 120,000 warriors, men, army, almost all of them. There was different numbers for each tribe, but that means there's probably 300,000, 400,000 men, women, and children and elderly in that tribe. It's a lot of people. And you times it by 12. So we're talking over a million people. The Israelites who came from Egypt back to the Promised Land. So not long after, King Saul was given the kingship of the 12 tribes. Now, he was from the tribe of Benjamin. And not long after that, King David appears, and he challenges Saul. And there is a war, and Saul is killed with all his family. David massacred them all. But they also massacred the tribe, all the people. So maybe 300,000 people were killed of the king's tribe. But 400 to 600 men escaped. Okay. Now, where did they escape to? It just says that all the tribes disappeared. And the northern kingdom they say 10 tribes of the northern kingdom, they remained, but the tribe of Judah and the Edomites who joined forces, who attacked the tribe of Benjamin, they stayed in the southern kingdom. But what happened was the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom left. Now, they don't say where they left to. But you've got to understand with the Israelites is that they were a highly advanced society. They had come from the Babylonians, the Sumerians. They were a advanced group of people. They were educated. They were high, like craftsmen, skilled weapon makers. They were skilled warriors. They had a system in which they worshipped God, the divine. And these guys are the basis of all what we have inherited in terms of the churches, the designs of the churches. This all comes from the Israelites. So they went out, they left. Where did they go? These 400, 600 men, where did they go? Well, there's another story that we get from the Greeks and the Romans of the Trojans. The same story, different names, but you have the Trojan War occurring at the same time as the tribe of Benjamin was destroyed, around 1100 BC. They also had a couple of hundred men survive. And those Trojan men, Aeneas and a few men that survived, went to Italy and founded Rome, or Alba Longa. And a few hundred years later, Remus and Romulus were descendants of Aeneas. And Aeneas, his descendants, founded Rome, and they became the Romans. So the Israelite tribes became the Romans. You understand, if you see the Roman civilization, the society that they built, they built beautiful structures, they built beautiful cities. They were an advanced society, just like the Israelites. And Rome grew and grew, and it was based on a society, a loving society. But of course they needed to be warriors. This is the time when there was many different kingdoms around who had to protect and defend. But they also spread the message of the Romans, so they expanded the empire. But they were good people. They were creators. They were artists. They were engineers. They liked to build society, organized society. They built roads. They built, where the Edomites were hunters, okay? So they didn't build. They're not builders. They are hunters. And so the Aeneas escaped, went to Rome, founded Rome, and there's no conjecture about that. This is in the history. Aeneas's great-grandson was Brutus, and the story is that he accidentally killed his father in a hunting accident, and he was expelled from Alba Longa and had to leave the kingdom. And where did he go? Well, he went to Britain around about 1000 BC and founded London. So you have these Trojans became Romans, who also became Britons. And so the British had around about 1,000 years of expanding, or the Trojans had 1,000 years of expanding in Britain. Brutus's 3 sons had set up a kingdom in Scotland, in Wales, and in England. And there is an account of the kings that came from Geoffrey of Monmouth. He talks about, in quite a bit of detail, the stories of the kings, and they had an invasion of Huns that came along and killed one of Brutus's sons, and they kicked the Huns out. But this story, to historians, is considered, what do they call it? Myth. They don't see it as real. Now you have to ask why that is. It's like, because they've hidden this history, 1,000 years of British history and Roman history, so we don't know where we come from. We don't know who our ancestors are. So the British, the original Britons, the Celts, who arrived in Britain around about 1000 BC. Like, historians say the Celts arrived, but they don't know where they came from. They were Trojans, okay? And they had very similar societal values as the Romans, as the Israelites. So the Britons lived and grew the kingdom, and they built their roads, and they built many churches, and all during this from 1000 BC until the Romans actually arrived. So the Romans came to Britain and invaded in 64 AD. Caesar had turned up around 100 years earlier and got defeated. He has an account of what went down, but he left. He didn't stay. But he talks about the Celtic tribes. So these Celtic tribes say that they descended from the Trojans, from Aeneas and Brutus. Like, this is, to understand this is so important for the Caucasian race. To understand where we come from is so important, and it's been hidden from us, because if we don't understand our past, we can't understand what's happening now. So we have the Trojans and Romans who have a beef with the Edomites that went down in the Promised Land. But where did the Edomites go? That is the question. Who are the Edomites? Who are these hunters? And I have been doing a lot of research into Y-DNA haplogroups. So it's like tracing, so it's the Y-DNA haplogroup is passed from father to son. And as the kings of the Trojans, they passed the kingship father to son. And it's because the Y-DNA is passed son to son to son, or father son, and it doesn't change much. So you could have 100 generations of male father line, and that Y-DNA that the son has is very similar to the great-grandfather 100 generations ago. It doesn't change much. This is why we hold on to our surnames. It's passing the memory of who your father was and who your great-grandfather was. So this Y haplogroup is possible to map where your origin story is. And these Y haplogroups change it's almost every generation they changed a tiny amount. And so the guys tracing your history of your genealogy, they use the Y haplogroup to put you into a particular category. So there's a map, a Y haplogroup of the R1b haplogroup, which is the Israelite haplogroup. And you can see how it has branched off over the last 3,000 years. And that branching is because what the ancients did was the king his Y-DNA would be passed through the whole tribe. I guess they had some way that the sons would probably have more women, have more children, and that was the idea, was that it expanded in the tribe. Because you've got to imagine that the original Abraham 3,000 years ago had 4 wives, he had 12 kids, and then they have 12 kids, and suddenly you've got a whole tribe. It doesn't take that many generations. And so you can track the haplogroup, the Y haplogroup, all the way to now. And it clearly shows, and I'll post it with this video, It clearly shows the groups, the groupings, and it shows me that Brutus arrived at this point and then branched off and had many, many children. And these haplogroups exist as the Britonic Roman Celts, who basically make up all of Britain. Now, since then, we've had arrivals of Anglo-Saxons, had arrivals of the Normans, but that first 1,000 years of English history that no one knows about built a population of Britonic people, all descended from Brutus, the Trojan. Then you have another group of the Romans kings who were in Rome. Their haplogroup is branched off the fathers, the original father, who was Abraham. And then you have the Spanish Celts, the Gallic Celts. That's another group. So you had these different kings that then propagated many children. And it's clearly shown in this haplogroup map. But then, interestingly, there's also the Germanic haplogroup, which split off 1 or 2 generations before Aeneas and Brutus split and went. They are the Germanic. Now, when you start to look at history, you see that the Germanic and the Romans called the Germanics barbarians. I don't know what the barbarians called the Romans, but they hated them. And we've got 3,000 years of battles, people fighting. So the Germanic and the Roman genetics are fighting each other. So basically, brothers, Esau and Jacob, their progeny have created Europe, and those wars between the different tribes, the Huns and the Franks. So the Franks were Roman based. They said that they descended from the Trojans, their kings. The Huns, I believe, were from the Germanics. And this is the story of our world. These different groups of people that all descend from the Israelites have been fighting each other in Europe for thousands of years. World War I, World War II, it was against Germany. The barbarians, the Huns, whatever you want to call them, against the Roman Empire. And the same shit is still happening now, because the Germanics, I believe, now control most of the world, the Germanic kings. If you look at Europe, all the royal families have Germanic DNA, haplogroups. They all descend from the Germanic bloodline of kings. Esau, who was King David and Solomon, they go off that way. Where Jacob and Saul and Jesus, they all went off into the Roman. And so we find ourselves in this position in this world right now, where the same, like, we don't know, the common people don't know this, but the people at the top do know it. And they have a problem with the Romans. The people that control this world have a problem with anyone who is Roman, British. And that then you start to understand why things are occurring the way they are. It's a lot more complicated because we've got Russia. How does the Russians fit into it? How does Ukraine fit into it? But it all stems down to the Y haplogroup, what tribe you originally came from. So that's a start. Hopefully that makes sense, and I'll post my little chart of haplogroups. I've got comments on there, and yeah, enjoy. Much love.